Hi everyone, welcome back. In a move that has stunned diplomats and economists alike, President Trump has threatened Brazil with a 50% tariff, not over trade deficits or economic policies as one might assume. No, that has nothing to do with that. Here's what's shocking. He threatened Brazil with a 50% tariff over Brazil's internal political affairs, believe it or not. Something that has absolutely nothing to do with international relations or the United States directly. The reason was Brazil's treatment of former President Bolsonaro. This marks a dramatic and unprecedented shift in how the United States might wield its trade powers. Now, of course, this happened the following day after Trump threatened all BRICS nations with increased tariffs too. He said the nations that pursue their economic sovereignty and want to enhance regional cross-border trade and investments and want to settle transactions among themselves in their local currencies, he said those nations, and I quote, are anti-American. In a sharply worded letter, Trump demanded that Brazilian authorities drop charges against Bolsonaro, who is currently facing legal proceedings in his home country, Brazil, for his involvement in a failed coup d'etat. This trial, said Trump, should not be taking place. It is a witch hunt that should end immediately, Trump wrote. Why is Trump silent when Zelensky's regime in Ukraine jails 80-year-old priests, 80-year-old Christian priests without any judicial proceedings? Why does he choose to be silent when clear human rights violations are taking place? Why worry about what happens in Brazil? Why worry about what Brazil does, a sovereign nation, at home? Brazil's current president, Lula da Silva, quickly pushed back, and Lula said Brazil would not be tutored by anyone, and he also emphasized that judicial matters are for Brazil's legal system alone. This, of course, should not be a matter of debate.
Nem acho que eu deveria comentar, porque eu não acho uma coisa muito responsável e séria presidente da República de país do tamanho dos Estados Unidos ficar ameaçando o mundo através da internet. Não é correto. Sabe? Ele precisa saber que o mundo mudou. Sabe? Não queremos imperador. Nós somos países soberanos. Se ele achar que ele pode taxar, os países têm o direito de taxar também. Existe a lei da reciprocidade. Eu acho muito equivocado e muito irresponsável presidente ficar ameaçando os outros em redes digitais.
Lula warned that any unilateral rate tariff hikes would be met with retaliation under Brazil's economic reciprocity law. He also added that Brazil's foreign policy is guided by sovereignty, respect, and the unwavering defense of its national interests, as it should be. Brazil stands out among Trump's recent targets for another reason too, which I want to bring up here in this video. It actually buys more from the United States than it sells to the United States. For example, in 2024, Brazil imported $44 billion worth in American goods, while the United States imported from Brazil $42 billion of goods. So this gives Brazil a rare trade deficit with the United States, which complicates Trump's usual narrative about punishing countries that run surpluses, allegedly at America's expense. Experts say President Trump's move is without precedent. This is completely unheard of. It is the first time officially that the United States has used tariffs as leverage to try to influence another country's internal judicial process. It could signal to America's trade partners and really the entire world that any issue that attracts Trump's attention could become part of Trump's trade agenda, whether it has anything to do with economics, finance, or not. Is it acceptable to sovereign nations? Well, likely we probably know the answer. Such behavior will only encourage nations to say, look, enough is indeed enough. Trump has a track record, too, of using trade threats for political ends, which is not unusual in the United States foreign policy. Earlier this year, he threatened sweeping tariffs on Colombia before reversing course in exchange for a deal on deported migrants. His imposed tariffs on China, for example, for the fentanyl crisis within the United States borders, the same fentanyl crisis that the United States government did very little to address domestically. And of course, more recently, he openly criticized the BRICS group of developing nations of emerging economies for undermining the US dollar because they now want to settle transactions among themselves in local currencies. But the Brazil threat may be the most extreme example yet. Asked about how he determines the tariff rate, Trump told reporters that it was based on, quote, common sense, deficits, how we've been treated over the years, and raw numbers. He also suggested that August 1st deadline that he set for countries to negotiate deals with the United States might not be set in stone, though he later insisted that all tariffs would become, quote, due and payable starting on that date with no extensions. So frankly, I think it is fair to say that nobody knows what's going on at this point in time, and we're seeing him, add more fuel to the fire of volatility and instability, and that, of course, complicates economic and business outlook moving forward. But here's what truly matters at the end of the day. Trump sent a message to the entire world, not just to Brazil. The message behind the Brazil threat is quite clear. Even if countries negotiate deals, there is no guarantee, there's absolutely zero guarantee that they will be safe from future tariff hikes or from flip-flopping on trade policies that the Trump administration has yet to clearly define. Economists at Barclays, for example, warned that Trump's approach could further erode confidence in trade agreements, especially among emerging markets. They wrote that Trump's Brazil move could make Asian policymakers more skeptical that any deal with the United States would bring certainty, or that the United States can be trusted at all. Does it even negotiate in good faith? Well, that, of course, following the recent events and Trump's admission that he was not conducting Iran nuclear talks in good faith, is a major issue for the United States as confidence in its policies declines on a daily basis across the world. Trump has also raised these stakes with other partners. He has warned the European Union of possible unilateral tariff despite ongoing talks and vowed to hit India with new levies due to its BRICS involvement. In recent weeks, he has floated a 50% tariff on copper products too, which triggered a record spike in prices, and even proposed tariffs as high as 200%, that's right, 200% on pharmaceutical imports from India unless drug manufacturing is relocated to the United States. While Trump praises his tariff letters as the beginning of new trade deals, even the agreements that he's reached with countries like the UK and Vietnam have been thin on details. Many see these as temporary truces rather than comprehensive solutions. He also recently announced a deal with China to ease restrictions on critical minerals, which is something the United States desperately needed, and that's also another example of using tariffs to achieve policy objectives beyond trade. The long-term impact of Trump's approach will hurt the United States. It is quite clear. It has already started to push America's non-aligned nations closer together. By targeting BRICS countries, pressuring allies, and linking trade to domestic legal matters, Trump is effectively changing the rules of engagement. It's clear that Trump sees tariffs as a tool to get what he wants, with little room for negotiations or exemptions. And ultimatums, as we know, are not only disrespectful in international relations, but also ultimatums yield very little benefit in the long run as they push other nations to defend their own interests at all costs because they become disillusioned by any possibility of negotiations with the United States. Ultimately, the Brazil threat may be a turning point. It shows that under Trump, no issue is off limits. Chaos is the game plan, not a side effect, and that tariffs could be used as leverage for quite literally everything, from criminal cases to geopolitical alliances. Whether this strategy will strengthen America's hand or backfire by pushing nations toward economic and diplomatic alternatives remains to be seen, but it is clear that it actually makes U.S. position much weaker on the global scale, as adversaries and allies such as Japan and South Korea, for example, are actually losing trust and confidence in the United States. They are becoming frustrated, and it is quite obvious. Show your support, like, subscribe, and share. It goes a long way. Support my work on Substack and Patreon. I would love to see you there. You'll find them linked in the description below. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you back here soon. Bye for now.